Welcome to another episode of Heroic Hotline. I am very pleased to welcome Dr. Leonard Sax to the studio. Dr. Leonard has been a guest previously on A Dram with Friends, and you speak all over on matters of gender, Boys Adrift, Girls on the Edge, or some of the books you've written, and you just had an article on same-sex education and some of the misinterpretations of the data from your perspective, and which I agree with. uh, actually, I got to start with a story that. So you were talking about the importance of people being properly trained to teach an all-boys school,
Mhm.
and so I coached high school rugby for years, and two high schools couldn't form a team. I think they did a number of sports, including football. So the Lancers and the Rams got together to put a team together, and they went with the name of the Lambs, which a senior boys rugby team. Uh, I'm not thinking that's one that they would have
Yeah,
picked.
not a good choice.
So what what have you been up to? I've seen you on Bishop
hmm
Barron earlier this year. So you've been very busy talking about these issues. Is it resonating with people?
Um, with some people who are ready to listen, Chris Spence was director of the Toronto School Board and asked me to speak to the trustees of the Toronto District School Board about why we need to pay attention to boys and what we could do differently in the classroom. And the reception was extremely hostile. Um, One trustee, so I began by pointing out that 50 years ago, most students, the majority of students at Canadian four-year universities were men, about 60%, and now it's swung the other way. Um, 60-40 women to men across Canada, and in Ontario. And a trustee said, all right, fine, the pendulum has swung. I don't recall anyone being too concerned 40 years ago when men outnumbered women at university. Now women outnumber men. Why should we care? Men still have most of the money. Most of the billionaires are men. Most of the politicians are men. I don't understand why we're supposed to be concerned about boys. And I had a one-word answer for her, and that is mating. Mating. And we have very good data on this from Stats Canada, actually, which I shared with her. I was prepared. Um, 50 years ago, if a young man graduated from university and was thinking to marry a woman, he might have many qualifications in mind for his future bride, but educational attainment was not one of them. If she was pretty, that would satisfy. It wouldn't have been unusual in that era for a junior executive to marry his secretary. Today, if a woman has graduated from a four-year university and she's thinking of marrying a man, um, she's looking to marry a man who has achieved at least as much as she has. And there are not enough good men to go around. And this is a major factor driving the rapid decline in the marriage rate in Canada, the United States, and indeed worldwide. And it's not confined to university educated women by any means. So I'm a family doctor in my own practice. Uh, Girl I knew well, girl I've known since she was a toddler. This story takes place, she's 20 years old. And I said, Linda, I bumped into Brett the other day. She's got two children of her own, two toddlers of her own at this point. I said, I bumped into Brett the other day, and he's just going on and on about how great you are and how funny you are and how pretty you are. And he told me he's asked you to marry him twice, and you turned him down. Linda, why don't you want to marry the father of your two children? And she said to me, Dr. Sax, I already got 2 babies at home. I do not need a third. Across every demographic, if a woman is going to marry, she's looking for a man who is as accomplished, as hardworking, as ambitious as she is. And there are not enough good men to go around. That's my answer to the trustee at the Toronto District School Board. Women are less likely to flourish in a world where a growing proportion of young men are adrift. In the United States, 1/3 of men who have no education beyond high school, 1/3 of young men with no education beyond high school are not in the labor force, not working and not looking for work. That's about 10 million men in the United States not working. And you asked, how is this resonating? Most people don't really care, to be blunt, in the mainstream media across the United States and Canada. It doesn't get the attention it should, in my judgment. So I wrote a book called Boys Adrift, highlighting these factors, and the subtitle was The 5 Factors Driving the Growing Epidemic of Unmotivated Boys and Underachieving Young Men. Well, there's a new edition that comes out September 1, and we've changed the subtitle. We crossed out the word 5 and wrote in the word 6, because there's a new factor that I'm encountering as a family physician and also when I meet with boys across North America. The new factor has 3 components: pornography, AI girlfriends, and the manosphere. And people say, pornography, there's nothing new about pornography. Pornography is as ancient as dirt, which is true. But something has changed. Until only about 4 or 5 years ago, if a boy was looking at pornography, he was looking at images someone else had created. He was looking at photos someone else had taken. Now, today, any boy with a laptop, an iPad, or an iPhone can pull up an app like Nano Banana or Seedream and speak his fantasy. You know, I talk about the word abracadabra. Abracadabra, thought to derive from the Aramaic abracadabra, which means I speak and it comes into being. That's the essence of magic. I speak and it comes into being. Every teenage boy now is a magician. He speaks his fantasy to the computer, and in 20 seconds, he has professional grade pornography. That wasn't a thing until just very recently. How popular is it? Well, we have a study just published 2 months ago from the United States. A survey of boys nationwide in the United States, 13 to 17-year-old boys, 55% of them, more than half, are now using these apps to create their own porn. And it is addictive. It is compelling. These are boys, many of them have never been on a date with a girl. So this boy has a crush on a girl. Again, a story derived from one of my school visits. I have visited more than 500 schools over the last 25 years. Boy has a crush on a girl, the pretty girl. She has no interest in him. She ignores him. No problem. He goes to her Instagram page. He gets his photo off her Instagram page and creates pornography with her. She's the star. So, yeah, this is happening. Pornography, AI girlfriends, and the manosphere.
You're opening so many boxes there that so first, the university graduation rate. I was at a gala for St. Mary's University last year where they were celebrating women, and I'm a father of 5 daughters, so I'm for that. But when they were announcing that 70% of the students at the university were female and all these strides they had made, I'm going, okay, where are the boys? And why are they not wanting to go to university? And why are they not being engaged there? And then the second part, Steve Wood had, we've been talking about pornography for a long time and just how much that is detrimental to your health, as it were. Like, he talked about studies where boys needed Viagra or whatever to
Yes.
at college age because they're so consumed by
Yeah,
media
right.
or
I
the
prescribe more
pornography.
Viagra for men under 30 than I meant do for men over 40.
Wow. And then yeah, the that whole boys, Tim Gray had written a book with Curtis Martin called Boys to Men, and you talk about that a bit, where there that has been lost because we never encouraged for probably 3 decades now. Boys were never encouraged to grow up. They were all boys' night out and boys' weekend, or and we haven't had this transformation from boys to men. We've lost that rite of initiation, as it were, into manhood, which I don't know as we've had in the Western culture for a little while now. And
Well, I cite the work of scholars like Dr. Putnam at Harvard who found that 50 years ago there were many informal mechanisms. Um, and he's documented this actually with more than 200,000 structured interviews that he and his students have analyzed. 50 years ago, you could go to any neighborhood on a Saturday afternoon and you'd find a bunch of guys working to the hood of a car. And and Dr. Putnam has analyzed who were those men, what were their names, how old were they. When you got a 53-year-old man, a 36-year-old man, a 22-year-old man, and a 17-year-old boy working on this car, and they're not related; they just happen to be neighbors. You can drive around a neighborhood today and you might see two old geezers working to the hood of their 65 Corvette, but the boys are not with them. The bonds across generations have been broken. And Dr. Putnam analyzes at exhaustive length how many mechanisms we had 50 years ago that we had lost. So bowling used to be more popular in the United States and Canada, but more importantly, from Dr. Putnam's perspective, it was done differently. 50 years ago, most of the bowling was in bowling leagues, and the leagues were single sex. Tuesday night might be the women's night, Thursday night might be the men's night. And again, his team digs up, okay, who was in the bowling league in Lake Forest, Illinois in 1971? Well, there was a 53-year-old man, a 37-year-old man, a 26-year-old man, and a 17-year-old boy. Kids still go bowling, but they go bowling alone, the title of Dr. Putnam's best known book, meaning not literally alone, but instead of this 17-year-old boy going bowling with a community of men, he's going bowling with a bunch of 17-year-olds, girls and boys mixed together, which, as far as Dr. Putnam is concerned, is bowling alone. When Dr. Putnam talks about community, he means bonds across generations, and the bonds across generations have been broken.
and that's a like, we promote brotherhood and the importance of brotherhood because you talk about that isolation and loneliness that many of these young men are facing. Uh, you talked about AI and pornography, but I interviewed another AI, Magisterium AI creator, and he was talking about, him and Brett Powell were talking about 70% of the use is as a counselor. Like, so they're getting their counseling from AI rather than a
Well, you
older
need to break. You
gentleman.
need to break. I suspect that that number is not broken down by male and female. Girls are using AI companions for counseling, but many boys are using AI companions as aids to masturbation.
Okay.
With websites like Candy.ai, which is the most popular of about 20 leading AI girlfriend sites, where you customize the girl, choose her eye color, hair color, breast size, butt size, slender, voluptuous, black, white, Asian, Latina. And these apps boast about how there are no guardrails. You know, you can't engage in phone sex with ChatGPT. It won't allow it, but you can with these girls, and that's what they're for. And they will leave you voicemails and sexts. They'll send you images. And the boys tell me it's very lifelike. These women don't just talk; they moan, they whimper, they gasp. So the AI's gotten really good, but boys and girls use AI companions differently.
Yeah, that'd be well. It's interesting because at the time of this recording, I haven't had a chance to dive into it yet. But the Pope Leo's encyclical
Mm-hmm.
on wanting to just put some brakes on AI and the importance of the dignity of the human person and it, so I haven't had a chance to break that down or
Yeah.
look at it, but it sounds like it's a step in the right direction. Just having that connection and when you talked about bowling leagues, what came to mind was we've attempted a couple times is disc golf is a huge game amongst young men, and so we've made up discs and stuff and gone out. And the nice thing is it's foursomes and it's very community. So if you got three and you show up and you're one guy, you can jump in with a foursome, and it's 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 a good connection. And yeah, putting down the phones and putting down the technology to build that brotherhood is what we're trying to encourage. So what is the importance of brotherhood in growing men?
Well, a boy, a girl becomes a woman whether she wants to or not, and all the harassments and frustrations of womanhood come on her, whether she's prepared or not, simply as a matter of biological maturation. But researchers find that's not true for boys. A boy does not become a man just as a matter of passage of years. Manhood has to be earned. And this is a robust finding. David Gilmour studied cultures, spent years studying cultures all around the world, and described this in his book, Manhood in the Making, and found that from sub Saharan Africa to Polynesia to the United States and Canada, a boy doesn't become a man just because he gets older. Manhood has to be earned. Uh, and we used to understand that, and we no longer do. And the result, on the contrary, I find fathers who completely misunderstand that. And, boys want to be men, but I'm finding a growing number of men who want to be boys. Fathers asking their 10-year-old how to play video games. That's not what boys need. Boys need a community of men to guide them into manhood. And again, as Dr. Putnam has found, we used to have many mechanisms across North America that this formal mechanisms like the Elks and other social organizations like that, but more often informal mechanisms like a bunch of guys building a shed or working on a car that was very common across North America 50 years ago and is now very rare to find teenage boys spending their time with adult men. Teenage boys now spend their time with other boys their own age. If they're doing anything at all, increasingly they're sitting in their bedroom playing video games and looking at porn.
Yeah, there. What came to mind was we had a young guy staying with us for a little bit, and I was building decks and fences on the side to make a couple extra bucks for the large family, and it's something I could do with my boys. And so we were out there and we were teaching him how to use the drill and the chop saw and everything. And he phones his grandma that night and he goes, I've got self confidence. Like I didn't remember that as part of the lesson, but just giving them and allowing them to handle tools and give them the confidence to use them in a safe and productive manner was it's amazing. Well, we do barbecue outreach as well, and it's amazing once you get allow the young guys access to the grill and serving people and being part of something bigger than themselves, I guess is what they're looking for. that adventure.
Well, and you can't underestimate how little these boys know. So I share the story of a program called Boys to Men in Southern California, where one of the leaders offer, offered a boy $50 if he would get all the nails out of a pile of lumber, and he gave him a hammer to pull the nails out. And half an hour later, he came back, and the boy hadn't accomplished anything because no one had ever showed him how to use the lever end of the hammer to pull the nails out. He was trying to use the hammer end. Um, Boys are not born knowing how to use a hammer. They have to be
Yeah,
taught, and we're no longer teaching them. And what you end up with is an angry, frustrated boy with a hammer in his hand.
that does not sound like a good situation. Uh, yeah, and that's where that whole mentorship uh, and walking, we whether it's accompaniment, if you want to call it brotherhood, no matter where you are on your walk, you need somebody to show you the way,
Mhm.
because you've got I've got a young guy who who's showed up at the church, and so I've been having coffee with him and just walking with him because he wants to know more about the workings of the church and why we do things and stuff, and we need to have men comfortable, especially guys like us with a little silver, to share some of that wisdom with younger generations. How do we empower men to do that or encourage them?
Well, I think it begins with explaining to men what's missing and what's important, and then encouraging them uh, to do this because a lot of fathers I find think that their teenage boys don't want to have anything to do with them, uh, feel powerless. Uh, and so, when I have the opportunity, I speak to parents about what boys need. Boys need a community of men, girls need a community of women. And again, Dr. Putnam and others have shown we used to have this not so long ago within living memory, but we have lost it. Uh, and boys are looking at pornography and video games, and girls are scrolling through Instagram and TikTok uh, to their great detriment. So I wrote a book called The Collapse of Parenting, where I said, look, parents have to reassert their authority and turn off the screens and connect kids with the real world, which was a bestseller, incidentally, in the United States and Canada. It was on the front page on the front cover of Maclean's magazine. It's a great cover, incidentally, of
There you
a.
go.
The illustrator created an image of a little boy shaking what appears to be two action figures, but they're actually his parents. Maclean's magazine.
Yeah, and that's a mistake many parents make. I've talked to it as a police officer, as a where your kids don't need another friend; they
Mm-hmm.
need a parent.
Yes.
Because there's these dads that want to be the cool dad, and I'll buy the alcohol for you and your friends to have a party at the house, even though you're underage. And what they really need is a loving parent that
Mm-hmm.
puts barriers and limits on what they should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I that's a major emphasis of my book, The Collapse of Parenting, where I talk about what you just said, that parents are confused. Many parents think that they're supposed to be their kid's best friend. And I explain, look, a friend is a peer. A friend cannot command. A friend cannot say, I will not allow you to watch porn. I will not allow you to have a phone in your bedroom at nighttime. A friend cannot say those things. Only a parent can say those things. There's any number of kids who can be your kid's best friend. None of them can do the job of the parent. That's your job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder if part of that is the parents needing friends and friendship that
Well, I
they're
think a lot of it is that parents are simply confused. They recall strict parenting from their childhood, and they don't want to be that evil parent. And so they want to be their kid's friend. And they think they have to choose between being strict or loving. And I remind them that the research, Dana Baumrin and others have found the best parents are both strict and loving. And I have a chapter in my book, The Collapse of Parenting, titled Joy, because just because you're the parent doesn't mean you don't have lots of fun with your kids. You do. But what do you do for fun? You teach your kids something you know. So, for example, my own example, I have always been a sailor. I learned to sail at summer camp when I was 10. And I've taught my daughter to sail. And we don't own a sailboat, but there's a, a park at Marsh Creek State Park, not far from us. You can rent a boat very cheaply. And we go out and have a great time. Last time we capsized, they should never have let us out. It was very high winds. But Sarah said she had a great time. Things that you do well, that you love to do, whether it's hiking or camping or fishing or sailing, you teach that to your kid and you do those things together. And that's my chapter titled Joy. Is one of the points I make there, that you are the loving parent. You are doing fun things with your kid, but you are teaching them. You don't want to be that pathetic father who's asking his 10-year-old son to teach him how to play video games. Parents need to teach children, not the other way around.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I could talk to you for a long time, and hopefully we can have you back on. And I'd be really interested in working more closely as we try to reach men, especially young men who have always been on my heart. So thank you again, and we pray that you continue to do the work that you're doing and reaching and addressing these issues that you like going into the Toronto public school system.
Yeah.
That takes a brave man.
Yeah. Well, I just want to remind listeners that you can find me on my website, leonardsax.com, S-A-X, leonardsax.com. And I do try to respond to every message I get there.
Including me. So
yes, indeed.
thank you.